I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just choosing to see the good. Let's keep it pushing to my number 3 most improved team. That would be the Atlanta Falcons. Speaking of older quarterbacks with Achilles injuries.
With Achilles injuries.
I want to take you back in time if I can.
Okay.
Because at this point in the year, last season feels so long ago. We've heard the same talking points, and you say, the Falcons finished 7-10. Let me take you back to week 15 of the 2023 season.
Mm-hmm.
The Atlanta Falcons had split the season series with the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
They were 6-7. They had the mathematical edge to win the division, even with a lackluster record.
Yep.
They had the mathematical edge to win with all of the things that were going wrong for them. And then they lost to the Carolina Panthers by a score of 9-7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Desmond Ridder threw a fourth quarter pick at the goal line.
Yes.
And the Panthers went down the field and kicked the game-winning field goal 5 minutes later. That's the game that cost Arthur Smith his job. I firmly believe that. So having said that, like that's the margin between making the playoffs as the NFC South winner and not, is that they couldn't score a touchdown against the worst team in the NFL. I don't know everything, but Kirk Cousins is going to improve on that.
Yeah.
You realize,
provided he can stay healthy.
Why are you doing this?
Just let me. I'm being a realist.
I said at the top of the show, this is the time of year for hope. This is the time of year for optimism. And also, hey, by the way, even if he doesn't stay healthy, Michael Penix Jr., baby. They doubled down on that quarterback thing. No, seriously, though. I looked this up. Among NFL quarterbacks who took 300 or more snaps, Desmond Ridder finished 24th in EPA per play, expected points added. Basically measures how good you were on a down-to-down
I'm
basis.
honestly shocked that he was even that high.
The only teams that were worse, that didn't have a catastrophic injury, like the only teams that had worse week in and week out starters, Pittsburgh, Carolina, New England, like the dregs of the NFL.
Yeah.
And they still only missed the playoffs by a drive, basically. So now you add Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney. You're a Bears person. That's an underrated signing, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
You trade for Rondale Moore. And this is still a team that had plenty of talent on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line is solid. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, probably not as good as we give them credit for, but intriguing, exciting young players, especially with a good quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm buying the Atlanta Falcons. I know it's cliche to get excited about the shiny new quarterback in the new city, but this makes sense to me. I see the Falcons being a very improved team for no other reason that they will have good quarterback play rather than arguably the worst quarterback play in the league.
Yeah. And I don't mean to say that I'm not with you, because I am. And especially given that division is completely wide open, and not for the reasons that like the NFC North is a little wide open or the AFC North is wide open. It's because the NFC South, it's not going to take 12 games to win that division. So we've seen it from Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, where he can get you through the regular season, and sometimes he can get you to the playoffs. He doesn't have a great postseason record once he gets there. But that being said, with all the weapons he has, with a new offensive scheme that hopefully exploits those weapons a little bit more, gets a little bit more creative, Kirk can deal the ball with any of them. And I am a little worried about, I don't know when we started treating Achilles injuries like they were routine. I mean, this is one of the worst, if not the worst injuries that you can ever have as a football player. But I do, apparently Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins were talking through their rehab, comparing notes, whatever that was. I do think that Kirk Cousins will be relatively ready to go. Like you said, they have a backup plan in Michael Penix Jr., although I don't think that's ideal, throwing a rookie in, last minute without having prepared him to be the starter. But that all being said, yes, the pieces are here. We didn't even really touch on the defense there, which
I'd rather not. It's not super exciting.
It's not super exciting, but I do think that Atlanta's defense is a little underrated. So I think that this is a team that can conceivably win this division, knowing that this division is not going to be that hard to win.
It remains the weakest division in football, I think.
Yeah.
Teams 1 to 4. The AFC West comes to mind, but they obviously have the best team in the league.
Right.
So even knowing that the other three aren't great, that you still have the Chiefs. So like 1-4, there's not a team in the NFC South that I completely and totally believe in. And so, yeah, I mean, 10 wins to get it done.
There's also not an element of surprise with, like, you look at what the Buccaneers have done. They've basically retained all of their guys. So you know what this team looks like because you saw it last year. So there's a question mark in Atlanta, but I think that kind of works to their advantage in, again, a division that is so wide open and relatively and very weak for that matter. So you already know what you're getting with the other teams. I still don't know what's going on in Carolina. The Saints, still the Saints. But now the Falcons have, the opportunity to be the little darling of the NFC South.
All of my preseason prognostications are riding on the Achilles of two very veteran players.
Right. Guys on the other side of 35.
Makes me a little uneasy. But part of this is the NFC South. It's an extremely winnable division.
I think a lot of it is the NFC South.
It's not asking a lot for the Falcons to, what do they say down there? Rise up, baby. All right. Number 2 on my list. Very obvious. Honestly, they have a case for being number 1. I would say the darlings of the 2024 offseason, and that would be the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud, rookie of the year, looked like the truth, looked like the next great quarterback. And again, credit to the Texans front office for, rather than sort of dilly-dallying and let's see where this goes, they're just like, nope, the window's wide open. We've got a great quarterback on a cheap deal. They go and trade for Stephon Diggs. They get Joe Mixon. I was thinking about this before the show, Carm. Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. There can't be more than 2 or 3 teams in the NFL with a better overall collection of skill talent. Like,
for sure.
San Francisco, obviously. Philadelphia, probably.
Bears might.
Well, put a pin in that.
I will, but I'm just,
yeah. No, okay. I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3. But there aren't many. And you've got CJ Stroud doing that. And obviously the Texans were willing to spend on the defensive side of the ball as well. D'Amico Ryans gets Daniil Hunter in there, 87.5 sacks coming over from Minnesota. Azeez Al-Shaair. I did see Danico Autry was recently suspended. Still an improvement in their overall defensive line. I get the Super Bowl hype. I understand why we were talking about this team as a Super Bowl contender, which is insane when you think about what we thought of the Texans at this time last year.
I think it's so interesting because now, after seeing the culmination of last season, we're like, oh my God, what CJ Stroud did was insane. And it was. It was completely unprecedented. I don't want to understate what CJ Stroud was able to do. But it's not as if there weren't some bumps in the road.
Sure.
And what the Texans did was take note of what those bumps in the road were. And they ended up bringing in experience for CJ Stroud and making sure that he can take that next step instead of just standing pat with what they had, being like, oh my God, last year was great. We're set. We're going to continue to ascend, because progress is very rarely is it linear. So now you've armed CJ Stroud with even more. I don't know that Stephon Diggs is necessarily the mentor experience type, but you're going to be able to rely on him to be where he needs to be. He's a phenomenal route runner. All that part of it, I like. I don't know that he's going to be bringing along like the younger guys necessarily, but he's going to be reliable for CJ Stroud.
I'm not sure that he needs to. Tank Dell was a rookie last year. He was amazing before he got hurt, and Nico Collins broke out for 1,100 yards, got a contract extension. I'd say the kids are doing all right. I think, and I think it's fair to wonder if Stephon Diggs is still quite as elite as what we remember from 2021, 2022. But even still, he is a very, very capable veteran receiver. And I stand by what I said. This is one of the 3 or 4 best skill groups in the NFL. I guess if I'm looking for weaknesses, the secondary maybe is a concern, but Derek Stingley looks like a young star at cornerback, and I'm
fiery one too, apparently.
Yes. Ooh, yeah.
He went after Dalton Schultz in practice the other day.
Maybe this isn't fair, but D'Amico Ryans, and I've said Robert Saleh. Raheem Morris in Atlanta falls into this category as well.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Raheem, but you're right. I like that a lot.
There are some defensive coaches where I'm just like, they'll figure it out. Like D'Amico Ryans will figure out how to have a capable unit.
And you have Ben Slowick too.
Bobby Slowick, sorry.
You have Bobby Slowick there too, who, I mean, is probably going to end up with a head coaching position after this year. If I had to guess. So, but yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to understate what CJ Stroud was able to do, but I really appreciate the fact that the Texans were like, okay, what is the next step? What can we still do? How do we make sure that we keep building on what was a phenomenal foundation to start with? Look at the Texans being competent.
And right? Like they were the punchline of all punchlines for a solid 3 years there. And the quickness with which they have flipped it around to, they're on the short list of true contenders. So yeah, they have a case for being number one, but if we haven't hinted at it enough, I do want to talk. You're the perfect person to talk to about the number one team.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think the Chicago Bears are a Super Bowl contender, but to just think where this team was last year, and even forget this time last year, what about 5 weeks into last season when after so much promise and hype, they face planted? They lost their defensive coordinator. They couldn't win a game.
Yeah, it had almost been a calendar year since the Bears had won a game.
And now we are actually, it's interesting to compare the Bears to the Texans because we're kind of doing the same thing for Caleb Williams that we're doing for CJ Stroud, except Caleb Williams has yet to play an NFL snap.
Right. I think, honestly, in a lot of ways, CJ Stroud was the worst thing to happen to Caleb Williams, given the fact that now expectations are through the roof. Even though I keep trying to quell all of the excitement a little bit by saying what CJ Stroud did last year at the end of it, the culmination of everything, that should not be the expectation for rookie quarterbacks. He's amazing. That was incredible. But most rookie quarterbacks are still going to struggle. What compounds these expectations, though, is that Caleb Williams is put in maybe the best situation a quarterback taken first overall has ever been put in. And it's because Ryan Poles, their general manager, has spent the last 3 years very meticulously curating this roster so that mistakes of old by past regimes were not continued. Ryan Poles said when he got hired in Chicago, "I'm here to break cycles." And he has so far delivered on that without seeing the actual results and the expectation of that. But you now see that where Justin Fields was thrown to the fire in a lame duck year for his coach, and Mitch Trubisky was thrown into the exact same situation before him. That is not the case with Caleb Williams, at least you hope, with the lame duck coach and everything. Matt Eberflus's defense is ascending. It was one of the best units last year. By the end of the season, especially the back half of it. I'm still a little worried about the defensive interior, but we'll get to that. But then you look at the weapons that Caleb Williams is going to have as he takes his first snaps in the league, and it is DJ Moore, who they just signed to a new extension, richest for a Bears receiver ever. And then you get Keenan Allen, who I think still has a lot of football left in him. He's been the picture of consistency for the Chargers, extremely productive, just a wonderful veteran receiver. And then you go and add a built-in bestie for Caleb Williams with the 9th overall pick and Rome Odunze out of Washington, who was probably my favorite receiver in the draft. I liked Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously as well, but Rome was just the best thing that the Bears could have gotten for now and the future, so that you are able to give Caleb Williams some consistency and stability. DJ Moore and Rome Odunze will be there with Caleb Williams for the entirety of his rookie contract, including his 5th-year option. Ryan Poles is trying to build for sustained success, and that's another reason why, yes, this team is the most improved team in the league, but I don't want the expectations to be playoffs, winning the division right away, because it still needs to gel. There's a lot of new. It's an entirely new scheme under Shane Waldron. And they are not just building for right now. They are building for now and later. Let's be a little patient. Let's take it step by step, Chicago.
I agree with you. Like I've been saying this all offseason. I don't think it's fair to put all of this on Caleb. I don't think it's fair to put it on the Bears, considering the road they've been on for the last 2 or 3 years, really 5 or 6 years. Not to mention what's in their division, aka the Lions and the Packers. But after you just laid everything out, I don't know, man. Like, it's hard to shy away from the fact that if Caleb Williams is even decent, this should be a really good team.
The Bears have done a really good job of insulating against quarterback play, essentially. Caleb Williams does not need to go out and be a world beater in order to make this offensive machine run. And a really underrated part of what the Bears did this offseason is bringing in not one, but 2 veteran centers that are now vying for the job. The offensive line actually has a lot of continuity. 4 of the 5 guys are returning. They're returning to the same position too, provided Nate Davis can get healthy and get to practice. But it will either be Ryan Bates or Coleman Shelton at the center position. And I talked about it earlier when we were talking about Lloyd Cushenberry. I love the pairing of a veteran center with a young or rookie quarterback because there is so much that center can do to help develop that quarterback and to take work off of his plate and to identify certain things and make sure that he knows certain things. That relationship is so special. And when it works, it's a huge help for these guys. So that's something that is going way under the radar with the Bears that gives me optimism. I think the offensive line as a unit is going to be a lot better this year because I also like the new scheme that's being implemented. But when it comes to what success means for the Chicago Bears this year, honestly, you want to know my real answer for this?
I do. I really do.
Beat the Packers week 11. That is all you need to do.
That's all they need to do.
That's literally all you need to do.
What if that's the only game they win?
Fine.
Can you walk me through this? I'm not.
The Bears, I mean, this is a little hyperbolic, but the Bears don't get a division opponent until that game. They have a long runway.
Buddy, they play all 6 of them.
Yeah.
In the last 8 weeks.
8 weeks of the season. You have a long runway to start gelling, to figure things out, especially like in the beginning of the season. I mean, they get the Texans week 2, but it should be a pretty easy entry to the NFL for Caleb Williams and this new look offense that the Bears have. So much so that by week 11, things should start to be clicking. And if that's the case, you go out and you beat the Packers at Soldier Field, where they have not won in so long. That city will absolutely buy into whatever it is you're doing. Like I said, I'm being hyperbolic. I don't think a 1-win season would save Matt Eberflus's job.
I get it, though.
But
I get it.
We talk about wanting to see tangible improvement to make sure that they're on the right track. Week 11 at home against the Green Bay Packers, you win that game. Let me put it this way. You could not win another game after that and it would still be okay. And everybody would be optimistic and you would think that, all right, one more year and this should all be good.
I think I know Chicago's too psychotic for me to completely believe you, but I do think
that's exactly why you should believe me.
I'm just so intrigued by a team that should have had the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago and still picked in the top 10, by the way.
Yeah.
This past year.
Right. And
now
that was the warranted pick. The number 9 pick was warranted by their record.
And now look where they are. Like,
yeah.
It's
a huge jump
to how quickly you can turn things around. I can't wait as the season goes to gauge how well it's going for the Chicago Bears,
right?
Because it's hard to pin down what we want from this team, but even still, I think from where they've been, where they were, the fact that we are talking about them in this way is why they are number 1 on my list.